Hello, my name is Simone Marcenaro. I'm associate professor from University of Molise, Italy. And the title of my project is Harmonizing Artistry, exploring the collaboration between AI and human expertise in translating Galician-Portuguese troubadour poetry, phase one. Yes, I've been involved in several projects actually, developed first at the Centro Ramón Piñeiro in Spain, in Galicia, and they're sort of pioneers in this field because they started working in digital humanities around um 20 years ago, more or less. So they developed many tools and resources to especially related to Galician literature and language. And actually, I'm co-PI of two large projects funded by the Italian Ministry of Education and University. One dealing with a prosopographical atlas of Romance literatures of the Middle Ages, and the other dealing with digital edition of medieval texts. So I'm quite involved in that field, as it should be, really. And I cannot say I had a proper training, but I rather learn from people who have the technical knowledge and skills within those projects, especially about markup languages and standards like TEI or XML, and database manager systems and tools like SQL and I don't know, CMS, content manager software. So I'm sort of branching out a little, but it's very useful to me to work in strict collaboration with engineers and people who have not only skills but especially the technical knowledge, about coding and everything. In Italy, if you graduate in Romance philology, you have to study manuscripts, of course, and literature and text, but you have to be proficient on almost two or three Romance languages. I specialized in the Iberian part, so Galician, Portuguese, Catalan, Spanish, of course, and but also a bit of Occitan and Old French. So it's a very close relationship between languages and literature in the Middle Ages. You cannot study the first without knowing a bit of the. Well, on the one hand, there are plenty of academic courses across the whole Europe, I can say, masters, graduate courses. But I think that the real game changer is to know about the existing networks because they are very large networks, and CLS Infra is maybe the one of the most important right now, because maybe the only difficult thing for a young researcher who wants to develop this kind of path is that digital humanities is a very huge field, and so you have to find what kind of language, what kind of coding, what kind of resources and tools you need in order to improve your research. So you need guidance, and that guidance cannot be cannot come from one single person. It's more about networks, and I think you're building a pretty huge network here, and I'm very glad to be part of this because it's maybe the first step for me to approach DH in a new and fresh, in a way, have a new and fresh approach. And so maybe I can, use that always, it's always useful for teaching purposes. So I kind of see as just the first step of a bigger path I intend to develop here. Well, I think I received a newsletter. I don't remember exactly when, because it was, several months ago. But yeah, I just received that email and I immediately applied because I was thinking of starting a project like this, but I didn't really know where to do it in Italy, because right now, as far as literature and old languages are concerned, I think there are countries where this field of study is, it's developing way faster. In Italy, we have some problems in dealing with it, especially if we talk about AI potential and risks, of course. So, it was really I was at the right place in the right time. So I submitted my project, and luckily I've been chosen to stay here. And I choose Galway because it was the best fit. Because here in Galway, um, there were some people who now are in other universities like Cork, for example, but there was a research group called Crosswinds, and this group is based on the idea that poetry should be always translated within a broader spectrum of languages, not only English, of course, but the whole Romance languages, and they're very focused on Spanish and Galician literature. So it was really the best fit for me. And the coordinator, Lorna Shaughnessy, is above all a poet, a great poet. And so she's helping me translating these texts. And we just have to see if AI translation and human translation can be actually compared, and what's the whole outcome of it. There's a connection with, for example, digital poetry. The whole landscape is changing, and that's a fact. And I find it pretty exciting. But in order to understand more the processes underlying and to all these mess, because it's really a mess, but it's a creative mess, or a very good mess, we have to build networks again, and always work in collaboration with people from other fields. You cannot do it alone. That's the part I'm very, I really believe in that. You cannot do it all alone. If I'm a Romance philologist and I'm interested in translating all the Galician Portuguese cantigas, I do not need persons like me. I need people who know about poetry, contemporary poetry, people who, of course, with technical skills. Maybe, I don't know, some linguists coming from another area, so no biases. Putting people together is the only way for me, because there's no really, today, there's no other way to have a successful project in this field. Maybe in other fields, we can work alone, I don't know, but not in this. The idea is not to understand deeply, because you really cannot understand it properly, the processes underlying its translation, but rather, to assess, to understand better potential and risks, because there's a whole potential. Imagine, for example, for teaching purposes, or even to, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a dream, but to go more towards the general public, the broader public, because for example, in Ireland or in the UK, but even in the States, this kind of medieval production written in languages other than English, Romance languages, is not so well known. So if you have to translate a huge bulk of texts, maybe in 2 months, it can be really, really useful. Of course, always working in parallel with translators and researchers. Of course, there are many risks, and we all know that. Probably, I don't know, in 20 years, translators wouldn't exist anymore. I don't know. But, I think that the only field where you can understand a bit more about balance between potential and risk is the academic one. So we have to do it. If not us, who can do it as well? So I think AI is really crucial, because it's really the link to the contemporary world. We cannot escape that. So we have to deal with it in a rigorous but creative manner. And kind of balance the two. I don't know if that's possible. It's really all new to me, but it's worth a try. Well, phase two, well, while phase one was really, meant to test this kind of collaboration and also to establish, the pillars for future collaboration. Phase two should be the building phase of a very large network. Well, very large, quite large network, European network. I really want to build about it. And my idea is that, of course, it can be rooted into the academic field and academic research. But what's crucial to it is that you also have to involve poets, translators, people who work in the creative field, but not in the academic one, because I think the most interesting part of all this project is just the collaboration between real poets, renowned poets, and all the research underlying the translation process and all that. And that's something we don't usually do in Italy, for example. In Italy, we are very, very academic in a very narrow sense sometimes, especially in humanities. So I kind of want, as I said before, to branch out a little towards the creative world. And, I don't know if it's still true, but I still believe that poetry can save the world. So let's give it a try. We are just working right now. We just had our kickoff meeting, so it's a fresh project. It's a project based on the EVT system, which is an Italian-based system dealing with digital edition and is a very flexible and light system, and is meant to make critical editions. So I don't know, classic Greek or Latin texts, but also texts in Romance languages. And we're testing right now. We are 4 universities: Molise, Torino, Pisa, and Napoli. And each one of these units is is testing this system on a different text. So the Naples unit is working on all ancient Greek text, the Turin unit on Latin text. We in Molise are dealing with historical sources, their private letters. And in Pisa, they're working on a literary text written in the 15th century Tuscanian language. So it's pretty exciting because, this system can be used in a very large field. And we are understanding possible outcomes of it. I hope we will be able to present the first results, and maybe publish some articles, make some posters in congresses. But again, we just started, so it's really fresh.